Yo, this is Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech,
And this is Nica Montford, aka Tech Savvy Diva.
and welcome back to the Snob OS Show, the show for Apple snobs, where we talk all things Apple and then some. We definitely want to welcome you back. This is episode 216 of the Snob OS Show. We definitely want to thank you for hanging in there for so long. Thank you for listening to the podcast, downloading the podcast. We definitely appreciate all of the reviews we've got. If you haven't reviewed the show, definitely go to wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a review, leave some stars. If you want to take it a step further, show us some love financially, definitely go to patreon.com/snoboscast to show us some love financially. And in return, you will get some exclusive content that you will not hear on our regular show. And you'll get to listen to the show earlier before we actually publish the show, which we record on Wednesdays and we typically publish a show on Fridays. So if you want to listen to the show a little bit earlier, show us some love on patreon.com/StombOS, and you'll get the show live if you're watching or listening live, or before we actually publish the show on the favorite Apple and podcasts and Google and all the other places that you listen to podcasts. So with that said, we're going to get right into the show. We always start the show with a lowdown where we talk all things Apple. And it looks like apparently to some of these states, COVID is over. Forget people are still catching COVID. Forget people are still walking around with masks. The indication that these states are pretty much done with COVID is, according to the story in Engadget, most states, many states, have halted both Apple and Google's COVID-19 exposure notification system. I don't know if you ever got one of those notifications, but Apple and Google decided it was the right thing to do to kind of roll in some of those notifications into iOS and Android devices. So if you are in close contact or you are around somebody who has transmitted the COVID-19, Apple and Google had a notification in there to where it would alert other people, whether it be at your school, whether it be, or even in your family or whatever the case may be, where you work on your job, that you could possibly have been exposed to COVID. Here, you go through the app and list some of your symptoms. You can answer if anybody else has been, tested positive for COVID in your family, all those other things. It seems like the states is like, nah, we ain't doing that no more. So they have turned off the COVID-19 exposure notifications on both iPhones across the US now that the public emergency, quote unquote, public emergency has expired. So I just wanted to get your take on, again, this is not Apple and Google themselves turning it off. These are the states that are deciding they don't want to either deal with the resources or the manpower or the money as it relates to these notifications. So I just wanted to get your take on that. Is COVID over now that Apple and Google has turned off the notifications, or do you think these still be good? Were they a waste of time in the first place because it was so kind of fractured? What's your take on it?
So we are still in a pandemic. I know people want to pretend that we're not, but there are still people who are getting the coronavirus, who are spreading the coronavirus, who are dying for the coronavirus. So the pandemic is not over. I don't. I would be very interested to see which states are turning off the notifications. I have a guess, an educated guess of where the notifications are being turned off from, and it tracks for what we know of the states who are likely to turn this off. My thing is, what harm is it doing by leaving them on?
That's true. That's true.
That's my thing. You're going through
Eh,
the effort of turning it off. What do you gain from that? Does that
right. But what do you
it,
lose?
right? What do you lose? Because my thing is, I can't see it taking that much effort to maintain this, especially when it's not the OS companies that are doing this. This is a state making the decision to to turn this off. And my
Right.
thing is, I don't. To me, it makes no sense to go through the effort. It's already rolling. It's already going. It's already doing its thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're making more work for yourself by actually going through the steps to turn it off. Just leave it
Mhm.
on and let it go about its business. I don't get it. But if
Right.
it's from states that I expect that I'm thinking of, then like I said, it makes sense.
Yeah, the story doesn't list specific states, but it does mention Washington State specifically. According to some of their studies, the exposure notifications may have prevented upwards of little 5,500 cases, prevented 500 cases in its first 4 months. It says California Department of Public Health says, even though it's still studying the benefits of the state's app, the findings from the COVID-19 response could help deal with future diseases. So basically, to summarize, they could just call it something else. If the bird flu comes out, just
Mhm.
cross out COVID-19 notifications,
Type in
exposure
bird flu.
notifications, call it bird flu. If the Ebola came back, cross
Yep.
out bird flu and put Ebola in there. So it kind of speaks to your point that and iOS and Android were the ones who created the notifications. All the states have to do, in my limited knowledge, is collect the data and decide what to do with the data. Now, I don't know
Mhm.
what kind of resources go into that, but I mean, data is data. Why not collect the data and then do some studies on it? But if you're turning it off, people are not going to use it, and you may not get that data.
Right, and you're already collecting the data, so you already have the processes and procedures in place to collect it. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, all that says COVID's over. States don't even want to be bothered with the data, which we thought was valuable data in the first place, but apparently not
Right.
so much. All right, so going on to the next story, we've talked about AirTags and the potential benefits and all of the pitfalls that come with AirTags. Seems like Apple is learning from its mistakes and still wants to go forward with progress as it relates to AirTags. And according to this, Apple has applied for a patent that relates to a new type of tracker that could be similar to an AirTag, but attaches to a person's body or clothes. Of course, Apple thinking about health, one of the ways that they explain how Apple could possibly use it. Again, this is not anything that they're working on now. They just apply for a patent. The new patent that was spotted by Patently Apple could be used to monitor things like posture, which is what I need somebody to
Oh, well,
to
stop slouching.
monitor.
You're sitting at your desk.
Right,
Sit up straight.
right, right. Sun exposure and more. Fall detection and motion tracking could also be present, opening door to multiple different use cases. So think of the AirTags that the Apple has just applied a patent for, not in a sense of tracking your location movement, but more or less tracking, things that the Apple Watch can't detect.
Mhm.
Apple Watch can't detect if I'm slouching. Apple Watch can't detect, you know, um,
How much sun I get.
yeah, sun exposure, some of those different things, because I was trying to come up with, well, ain't that what the Apple Watch does? It's a tracker. It tracks my motion, tracks how many
Mhm.
steps I take. When I work out, it tracks, how much I've worked out and my calories and my beats per minute and my
Mhm.
location if I'm outside running. So why would I need another monitor on my shirt or on my shoes or on my pants? And it seems like this will come up with a um some examples, right? Let me
Mhm.
go another one, some other examples. Physical therapy, running assistance. I'm not sure what running assistance, maybe just more data points, medical applications, biometric applications, personal training, and other functions. So it seems like these AirTags that they have, not, I don't want to call them AirTags, a patent that Apple put out that works similar to an AirTag.
Wearable
Looks
tag, I
like,
think I see it
yeah,
as Apple is calling it.
yeah, a wearable tag that could collect much more data. Do you think with Apple's health initiative and all the things they're trying to manage and not improvise, but mainstream is the word I'm looking for as far as health is concerned? Is this a good look for Apple to do something like this, or is Apple just doing this so if somebody else comes out with it, they can say, we have the patent, so either cease and desist or break us off on some of that cash?
I think it may be a bit of a preventative thing because, when I read the story first, I'm like, a lot of the things that it's saying the Apple Watch already does or has the potential to do if they are talking about sensors. So I was a little bit like, why would you even need this? Even looking at some of the other examples, because my thing is, would you need more than one? Like, would you need to put them on different places? Because
Right.
posture, physical therapy, medical applications, personal training, my thing is putting them at different points of your on your body would give you different results, yeah? So that's why I was
Um,
like, I don't know how this would what this would look like fully fleshed out because looking at one of the diagrams on Patently Apple, like one wearable tag is on the hand, there's one on the ankle, then there's one that has like multiple of these tags all over the body. So I don't know. This seems kind of strange to me.
well,
Um,
look at it from a standpoint of CGI in movies, right?
mhm,
We know, let's just take Fast and Furious. I got a new Fast and
mhm,
Furious movie coming out on Friday, and some of the outrageous, ridiculous stunts that they do, we know for a fact that's not some dude jumping from
right.
a car in space, right? Typically, that is computer generated from some dude with a bunch of dots on his body
Bunch of sensors on him.
doing the moves, and then
Mhm,
the FX people do the magic, right?
right.
Think of it in a case like video games where you
Mhm,
where you're doing virtual reality, not even virtual reality, like the Just Dance moves, right? To
mhm.
where you got to hold the thing in
You
your
hold a
hand,
controller.
and
Mhm,
you move along with the dancers, and you get the points. Well, if imagine that, but you have a whole suit full of sensors. You could do the moves more in sync with the actual gameplay. I'm looking at this as in, yeah, I've got my watch on my arm and it can
mhm,
track some things, but
mhm.
again, in order to collect more data, you need more data points.
Right.
So I would hope that there would be like some serious use cases for me to buy, or whatever, however you get them, to where you put all these sensors on your body. Yeah, posture is cool, sun exposure is cool, but am I spending 80, 90, $100 for a shirt just to track my
Mhm,
posture? What other,
right.
my thing is, what real, beneficial use cases could Apple come up with to get people to buy these suits that pretty much just track everything that you do all day long?
Yeah, and I think that was like my confusion around is like, what are the use cases for this? And like, how many would you have to have? And
Right,
are they going to be built into clothes or do you attach them to your clothes?
right,
Like,
right, right.
how does this work? Because this is a little bit to me it's a little bit I won't say strange, but maybe unorthodox is the word I'm looking for because
Yeah,
I'm not sure how practical this is.
it mentions wearable tags that may be placed on different part of the user's body or clothing. So maybe some clip-ons, like you'd use the mics, the wireless
Mhm.
mics that can clip on your shirt, or even
Mhm.
whatever the case may be, like a little clip or something like that. That's what it seems like, according to Patently Apple. I would hope that'd be the case versus having to buy all new workout gear. But again, this is just a patent. We all are just speculating.
Yeah.
Again, I mentioned that this Apple or any tech company coming up or filing a whole bunch of patents is possibly what we plan on working on. But also, it's kind of like, well, we came up with it first, so y'all can't do it because we
Yeah.
got the
I Yeah,
patent.
I think this might be Apple trying to get ahead of the curve. Maybe their think tanks and all of their geniuses that are just thinking up stuff. They have a roadmap of what it looks like down the road or where this could be going. And maybe, like you said, they're just getting a jump on it to say, we did it first and you can copy us, but you're going to have to pay for it.
All right, moving on to the last story into the lowdown. I don't know if this is petty. I don't know if this is nobody's really using it, but it seems like if you are a Apple Watch user that also sends and receives messages using the Messenger app for your Apple Watch, it looks like Meta is killing off the Messenger app for Apple Watch in a matter of weeks. According to the story, they really don't give a good reason as to why they decided not to use the Messenger app on the Apple Watch. They just say, you know, you can continue using Messenger on your iPhone, desktop, and the web. So, since they don't give us a good reason as to why Meta is killing off the Apple Watch Messenger app, I guess we're going to speculate. So, what, in your opinion, do you believe is the reason as to why Zuckerberg has killed off the Messenger app for Apple Watch?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't use Messenger. Um, so, it doesn't really affect me neither here nor there, but it's just really strange. In the article that we're reading from, it mentions that they're bringing WhatsApp to the wearable to Wear OS, which is for the Android wearable devices. So it's
Mhm,
not as if it's one of those things where they're opposed to it and it's still going to remain on, all of your other Apple devices except for
mhm,
your watch. So it's just really strange. In the article, and I was like thinking, why would they do this? What does this benefit for them for turning it off? Similar to what we were talking about with with the exposure notifications. What does this do to you to turn it off? And like you said, it could be petty, but I don't think so, because if it was, they make it more difficult for other Apple devices to use Messenger, but they're not. It's just specifically targeted to the Apple Watch. And in this article, they say, which I think is maybe the more likely reason, is that Meta hasn't found a way to earn money for them.
monetize, yeah,
Yeah, they
monetize
can't
that.
monetize
Mhm,
using Messenger on your watch, because the thing is, you'll still be able to get the notification that you
mhm,
have a message from Messenger. You just
mhm,
can't respond back to it from your
right.
watch. So it's not like they're completely turning it off. They're just turning off your ability to respond to the message. So I think, like the article says, they can't monetize it. So it's like, fine, then we'll take away um, some of your accessibility. I think, I guess.
Yeah, I use Messenger on my phone more than likely. I don't message a lot of people, mostly just family who are on
Right.
Facebook and they can't get out of that. I got to use Facebook for everything, so they just use
Right.
Facebook Messenger when they're not trying to talk to me via the regular public post in a response,
Right.
father, like my father does. So I don't get a lot of use of the Apple Watch Messenger app. Maybe it was just too much effort with too little of um, usage out of it. Maybe a lot of people are not using it. It's like, well, why are we wasting this much time and effort and resources to keep this thing up to date, keep it using, keep it moving, keep it a good user experience when ain't nobody really using it in the first place? That would be my reasoning for nixing it. But
Mhm.
since Facebook is just like Twitter, trying to figure out how do we make money. Maybe integrating WhatsApp into Android Wear OS. Maybe Android has made, or Google rather, has made some concessions that allows Facebook to monetize, excuse me, monetize the Messenger app for Android Wear, where Apple was not willing to make those concessions. So Facebook was like, well, forget it. We'll just cut it off altogether.
Mhm.
All right. So that's all I had for that particular story. We're going to move into second string where we talk all things tech. And even though this is Windows, it still has some iOS stuff on it. We talked maybe last week or 2 weeks ago about this phone link for Windows Phone that enabled users to kind of use Apple Messenger on their Windows device, which we kind of surmised, while cool, not all that useful. Well, Windows ain't done with trying to integrate Apple features. And with this phone link app, they have now rolled out the ability for Windows 11 to use AirDrop, to where you can send and receive files, messages, things of that nature from your Windows 11 device to your iPhone device. So I just wanted to get your take on this version, this feature. Is this, in your opinion, more of a substantial use case, unlike the Messenger app, to where it really ain't Messenger because you can only get the messages, all the things we talked about last week.
Yeah.
Is this more of a substantial move for Windows to get Windows users and iPhone users to use their devices in more harmony?
I think so. It's slightly better than the iMessage for Windows
Uh-huh.
fiasco because it's really not iMessage. For this case, it's more of being able to just transfer contacts and device and files through
Uh-huh.
Bluetooth. You can
Uh-huh.
already do that with like older versions of Windows. They
Okay.
have the Bluetooth transfer feature on
Mm-hmm.
most
Mm-hmm.
PCs that you could do that. I think this
Mm-hmm.
just gives it a snazzy little app that makes it a little bit easier rather than having to go through, look on the Bluetooth, search for the device, and
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of extra. I think this wraps it up in a neat little package for you to
Mm-hmm.
do that. But there are even still limitations
Right.
on this. What they
Mm-hmm.
have now, maybe they're looking down the line to be able to add more, but there's still limitations. But I think this is a better offering for this phone link than what we saw with the quote unquote iMessage for Windows.
Right. And those limitations are you can't use it on an iPad and you can't do it from Windows 11 to a Mac. It's got to be Windows 11 to your iPhone and to your iPhone only. If you use that phone link, you can, like we mentioned, send messages back and forth, like we mentioned earlier. You can take phone calls, you can look at contacts, and you can transfer files across devices, which is what I do. I use AirDrop a lot between
Yes.
my between
So
my
me.
Mac, yeah, yeah, between my Mac and my iPhone and my iPad. So I can only imagine being having a Windows 11 device and not being able to use that functionality on a regular basis like I normally do via my Apple devices. So I can definitely see the benefit of it, but only if you're using an iPhone, right? Once you
Yeah.
add an iPad into the mix, once you add a Mac into the mix, you can forget about it. So it's still kind of like, air quotes, kind of like the original, the OG AirDrop for Apple ecosystem, but at the very least, you get a little bit more functionality than, like we mentioned, the whole message thing, which
Yeah.
again is only useful if you're looking at the messages on your computer. If you're not, then you lost all that history.
Right. And my thing is, I don't see this anywhere in the article if there are any limitations regarding the types of files that can be transferred or the size of them. That
Uh,
I don't
yeah,
know.
because it is
And that would be
unlimited.
good to know.
Because it is there's I don't say it's unlimited. There appears to be no limit between my Mac and my iPhone and my iPad. You know,
Right.
movies, uh, uh, mu- songs.
Nothing I've
Uh,
tried to transfer has failed.
yeah, right, right,
So,
right. All
but I don't
right,
know if
all
there
right.
are limitations with this, but I think this is a a step in a better direction than when they did the iMessage for Windows thing.
All right. All right. So the next story up is WhatsApp will let you hide messages. Now, this is different than WhatsApp just encrypting end-to-end encryption messages, to where if I am messaging Nica and we're both using WhatsApp, if an outside company, an outside source tried to read those messages, they couldn't because our phones act as the encryption and the decryption devices that locks down those messages. Now, if I'm talking to somebody on WhatsApp and like my wife gets a hold of my phone,
Mhm.
I can, if I didn't want her to see those messages, there are no messages like that, but I'm just making up a scenario. If I wanted to hide those messages so somebody who got access to my phone wanted to read those messages, there's a new chat lock feature that creates a password and biometric locked folder for your most sensitive convos. So I just want to get your take on, is this something that you think people will jump at, specifically um, WhatsApp, or is this, just some feature that may or may not be used by people that use WhatsApp on a regular?
A lot of people use WhatsApp,
Hmm.
and a lot of people have been caught up in situations from WhatsApp.
Hmm.
Messages being leaked or people getting access to them. So if you are trying to do some undercover, covert, need to keep secret stuff, then I guess this is good for you.
Hmm.
Um, but my thing is, because I think in the article it mentions that the scenario they put was if you share a device with someone or someone
Hmm.
has
Right.
regular access to that device and
Right.
there's things
Right.
that
Right.
you don't want them to see, you could put it in this folder and name it or and lock it or whatever. But my thing is, if you are sharing this device or someone else has access, they can still go to, I guess, I'm assuming, I'm not 100% sure, to this chat lock section and see folders in there. So if people have questions, they can like, look, you got a secret folder over here. What's in this? If they, care that much, or if there's, cause for people to be concerned about some activities that folks are doing. But I mean, I guess if you have something you wanna keep confidential and you wanna hide from people, then okay,
Well, the
this is
way it
good for you.
works is, yeah, way it works is similar to like notes. Like I have notes on my iPhone, um, that are just notes to where you can open up and see them, but I also have private notes that I've created, notes that I don't want anybody to see. So when I create a locked note, I have to create a password that is different from the password that I use to unlock my phone, and that enables me to reveal those notes. Same thing with hidden photos on the Photos app. If I've got some photos that I want anybody to see, if I want to access those photos, I have to use another biometric lock to get past those, right? So in
Mhm,
your scenario where you mentioned, if you're already holding my phone and a
mhm.
message comes in, the message will come in as a hidden or a locked message.
Gotcha,
And then
gotcha.
if you try to click on that, which you already have access to the phone, it's going to ask you again for
For the
another
password.
password or
Gotcha.
some other or a biometric lock again in order to access that. So even though you have the device, you're using it, and a message comes through, you still gotta have the credentials to get into that in order to see anything.
Right. Yeah,
So,
well, yeah, I'm sure there are definitely use cases for this. Some
oh
on the
yeah.
up and up and maybe some that are not on the up and up, but nonetheless, if you have reason to want to put things
Well,
in a way for people to not access, then it's definitely a good thing.
right. So I'll give you an example, right? If I am planning a birthday party for my wife and I'm trying to do it on the low to where I don't
Mhm,
want her to know, right now, as it stands without this feature, my wife knows my passcode to my phone. She can get
mhm,
in. I haven't put her face in it, but
mhm.
if you can't get in biometrically, the backup is use your code.
Type in the
She knows
code.
the code. She can get in the code. Then she can just open up WhatsApp. WhatsApp
Mhm,
itself as an app is not hidden by some lock or whatever the case may be. So you can get into that. So I do run the risk of spoiling the birthday party plans if she gets in my phone and a message pops up about
mhm.
something unrelated and she gets nosy, click, 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 now she's in the rabbit hole of what's going on, right? So with
Prime
this
example
feature,
from her birthday,
right, right,
where it was
right,
a surprise thing,
right. Luckily she ain't that nosy, but who
and she
knows
was
when you're
surprised.
right. Who knows when you're actually looking at somebody's phone and a message pops up? I don't know too
Right.
many people
You never
that's gonna be
know.
like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that message ain't for me. Let me not look at that." Your eyes have already been revealed to the juiciness of this
Right.
message that looks weird. So down the
Right.
rabbit hole you go, right? With this
Exactly.
feature, regardless of your nosiness, the message that pops up, it'll say locked, and you got to jump through some extra hoops to try to get in. So, that's the only use case that I can think of that's on the up and up now. If I'm out here, out in these streets, I could definitely see this as a benefit,
For
to where I
sure.
try to keep some whole relationships private.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's probably going to be what most
The
people use it
overuse,
for,
right, right, right.
or nudes flying around on WhatsApp. So
Exactly, exactly. All right, so the last story I had in second string is Google gets a foldable phone. Earlier this week or last week, I think Google did their I/O conference, which is similar to WWDC. They announced a whole bunch of stuff, none of which I really care about, with the exception of Google getting into the foldable phone game. Right now, Huawei, Samsung, a couple other manufacturers, a couple Android manufacturers have foldable phones and they've had them for a couple years. But I think it's interesting that Google, that makes the Pixel, has decided to get into the foldable phone game. I'm not going to get into all of the specs, but think of a phone. Of course, you fold it out and you get multiple screens to where you can do multiple things. I guess Google has decided the foldable phone market is good enough to get in, even though this thing will be $1,900 when it's released. Um, just want to get your take. Is this an indication Google getting to the foldable game? Is this an indication that there is enough of a market for maybe even an Apple down the road to get into the foldable game? Or is this Google trying to set itself apart from iPhones, which are, the go to phone for a lot of people?
honestly, I'm a little surprised that they came out with this foldable phone because um, I don't see a lot of people clamoring for this type of device. I will say that this one does look more like a regular smartphone when you fold it. If you look
Mhm.
at I think the
It's a little
Samsung
shorter.
Fold,
It's a
it's
little shorter.
this
It's a little fatter. Hmm.
yeah, the Samsung and the opposite is for the Samsung. The Samsung is skinnier and longer, and it doesn't look as much like a typical smartphone. So I think in the design, this looks a little bit more like a normal smartphone when it's
Hmm.
folded.
Hmm.
And I think that helps. The price tag is enormous. I just looked up the Galaxy Fold, and it's like
Hmm.
$1,800. So it's on par. The one that I
Right.
found is on par with this price. I did see some folks who were at the IO conference that I follow on Twitter, and my my thing with the phone is when it's open, it looks like the open out screen, it looks like it has the potential to maybe have some problems down the line because along the seam, it looked a little bubbly. I don't know if it was
Hmm.
distorted from the video or the way they were holding it or whatever, but it looked like when you opened it out, the seam was a little kind of bubbly where it could
Hmm.
potentially have some issues down the road to not have the best view when you're like looking at it full out. Like if you have it split screen, then sure, it may not look as bad. But I think when you're looking at it like fully folded out and it taking up the full screen, it looks kind of weird. But I personally don't care if Apple does this because I personally wouldn't buy a foldable phone from Apple that's in the same type of style as this Pixel Fold or the Samsung Fold because I don't get the Pro Max. I get the Pro but not the Max because I got small hands and I was like I don't need all this extra stuff. If I need to have this large of a screen
Hmm.
for a mobile phone,
Hmm.
what the hell am I doing? Because I
Well,
because for me,
so
for me in my personal use, I don't I it doesn't add anything to me in my experience for usage for
right.
me.
Well, so bigger phones, we as a in general are going in the direction of bigger phones. In addition to that, and I can only speak from a man, men are starting to carry more things, which is why the crossbody man purse is super
Messenger
popular
bag,
now. Is that what they call them? Messenger bag,
I
crossbody,
guess, I don't
whatever,
know.
man purse.
Man first.
we're starting to carry more stuff. Like in addition to just credit cards, men are starting to carry, AirPod. We got AirPods I need to stick in my pocket now. I may want to carry some chapstick. I've got glasses that I may want to carry some
Sunglasses.
sunglasses in addition to my
Yeah.
regular glasses. So men are starting to carry more stuff. So the idea of getting a phone that could fold out into a bigger phone, at first I was like, no way. Because there's no
Mhm.
way I'm putting that big old bulky thing in my pocket. Well, not me personally, I'm not carrying a man purse. But in theory, if I didn't have that obstacle, that challenge of I need to put this in my pocket, now I can put it in something else that I'm carrying. Then I may say, you know what? Maybe a bigger phone may be a benefit. Like, for instance, a lot of restaurants nowadays, even though COVID's over, when it was popular, restaurants are still sticking to the scan the QR code and look at the menu for
Mhm.
ordering your food, paying for it, or whatever the case may be. Even though I have an iPhone Pro Max, there are some times to where it's like, I want to look at the pictures, you know, and having a phone that would then fold out to where it would feel like a menu would come in handy, right? If you're going to a conference and the conference has or going to Disneyland, for example, and you want to look at the park layout or whatever, I could see being able to fold out this phone and then have a map, easily viewable version of this map on a phone that I could do it on my um, iPhone 14 Pro Max, but actually having that larger layout may come in handy. Now, that's just two um, ideas that came off the top of my head that I still would
Mhm.
not pay $1,800 in the off
$1,800.
chance, right? In the off chance that I go to a restaurant or go to Disney World,
Right.
I don't really see this for real productivity. I see it as in the event that I need a larger display, I have it, right? Can Google, there I'm looking at the little video on the Google
Mhm.
website, and they're showing you all these productivity scenarios to where the guy has a not a PowerPoint, but like a Google slide, and he's on
Mhm.
one screen, he's looking at the presentation, and then on the other screen, he's going through his photos to then
Mhm.
drag a photo into the presentation. I'm not doing that on the phone. If I got to do it that bad, I'm
No.
gonna stop. I'm gonna stop and pull out my laptop or whatever the case may be, or just wait because work ain't that important to me. Maybe it's important to
Right.
you. It ain't that important to me. I'll be like, I'll look at that when I get back to the office, right? But that's
Right.
just me. That's just me.
Yeah.
So again,
Maybe
I
this is for
think
heavy productivity, high productivity people who
I don't
use
even
that on the go, but I don't know. You got an iPad or a Surface that you can whip out and do this on. I don't know. It just seems weird to me.
if you're that important, either carry a laptop or stay at home if you're that important. I
I
think
don't think nobody that important.
people like
I
to
think
feel
it's a
important.
nifty little they have something to show at their IO conference,
Or
and this is one of their things.
or maybe they put this in play during COVID when a lot of people were working remote. And a lot of the people that were working remote, that gave them the excuse well, I don't have to sit in front of my laptop. I can go do some other stuff. So imagine me around the house mowing the lawn when I'm supposed to be at work and somebody asked me to do something real quick. Well, I can pull this out and then do my little add, the corrections or whatever, and don't have to go back into the house. So maybe Google was like, all right, we know a lot of people are remote working now. We know a lot of people are mobile now. Even though these companies are trying to get people back into the
Back
office,
in the office, yeah.
that ain't 100% yet. So maybe we can get some people to buy this thing because they know or are really resisting or have grown accustomed to being more mobile on their jobs. But again, that $1,800, $1,900 price tag, I don't know if that's it yet.
That's steep. I would really be interested to hear from people who actually would want this device and like why. And that's not being shady. It's just I would be interested to see what would lead you to want to buy this type of device, especially with this hefty price tag. I mean, for
Well, there's
$1,800, you could get you a nice laptop. Even if you're not a Mac person, you could
mhm,
get you a
mhm.
nice M2. If you're a Surface or a PC person, you could get you some pretty nice devices for this price tag.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think that's going to be the thing. Are these going to stay this expensive? Or if more of them are flooding the market, maybe that drives the price down because everybody's doing one specifically. Everybody's waiting on Apple to decide if they're going to jump into that game or not, which is not far fetched because if
Mhm.
you're listening to the rumors and all the things that Apple is talking about as far as what they're going to announce at WWDC, all rumors point at they're going to announce this AR VR headset thing to where we was like, Apple ain't never doing that. That's stupid. But who knows, right? So right now we're saying, this foldable phone is so expensive. Ain't nobody doing that.
Yeah.
It ain't far fetched. Apple maybe 2 or 3 years down the road be like, now the foldable phone has arrived, and then we'll be on this podcast like, oh man, that's the greatest thing. All right, so that is it for second string. We're gonna move into for the culture. I just thought this was super interesting. I came across a tweet to where this guy, his name is Lee Fang. I'm not sure what he does, but he must have been following closely to what BuzzFeed is doing, and he
He's an
put out a
investigative journalist
okay. He's an
independently. Yeah.
independent investigative journalist. He was poking around in what BuzzFeed is doing as far as their investors meeting, and he pretty much summarized important part of this investors meeting at BuzzFeed, who owns Complex, they own HuffPost, Tasty, I'm not sure what that is, and a couple other online journal website, platforms. And according to him, this summary of this investor meeting was BuzzFeed Inc. tells investors that AI will generate content, headlines, quote unquote, infinite quizzes, and develop Black, Asian, Latino identity based content to help corporate brands tap an authentic voice in quotes to sell products. So I looked at that sentence,
Mhm.
and the two things that stuck out, well, three things that stuck out: AI, our
Mhm.
artificial intelligence; authentic. You think of authentic, does that jive with AI? And then Black, Asian, Latino identity based content. So it seems like BuzzFeed wants to use their properties to reach out to these Black and Brown folks using AI to create a more authentic voice. So I just
Mhm.
wanted to get your opinions on how do you feel about that? Where do you think that's going? Is that legit? Is it ethical?
So I'm not surprised by this at all. If you remember back in the summer of 2020, with the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and numerous other Black people who were murdered by the police, all of these DE&I initiatives, money, all of it. I mean, it was just springing everywhere. I mean, it was a land of milk and honey if you were in that space or if you pivoted into that space. The opportunity was massive. Here we are in 2023. Most of those opportunities have dried up. Most of those groups have disappeared. Companies aren't reaching out as much because now things are cyclical. Unfortunately, the murder of Black and Brown people, the engagement for that is cyclical, based on people's desires. Blue boxes, black boxes, all those things. This is a way for companies to tap into that market because let's let's stop be weird about it. When all this is going on, getting minority folks um into spaces that command attention it was a good look for many of these companies who are, let's be honest, white led for the most part, white male led for the most part. Now they can pull all that money back that they had for all these DE&I initiatives, and now they can use AI to essentially do the same thing without
Mhm.
having to employ actual black and
Mhm.
brown people. Because the biggest thing in this statement that he has, this heading is helps corporate brands tap and quote authentic voice to sell products. So
Mhm.
they're able to use these methods to tap into the black community, the brown community, to help sell their products to them without actually having to have the real human
An
interaction, the
authentic
people who
voice.
special right, to have, the people who specialize in this, who
Mhm.
are experts in this. They don't have to hire those people anymore, but they
Mhm.
can still seem as if they have it, because how did you know that black people were into this? How did you know that Latino people were into this? How did you know that Asian people were into this? You must have, black and brown people on your payroll, because that's the whole thing. A lot of times when these different things were there any black people in the room? Were there any women in the room? Were there any LGBTQ people in the room? Were there any Asian people in the room when some of these things roll out? So now they'll
Mhm.
still be able to give the appearance that they have black and brown authentic voices in the room when it's
Mhm.
actually just manufactured.
Just a robot.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try to keep it succinct because I got a couple of thoughts on this.
Okay.
Um, the way Cambridge Analytica and that whole Facebook thing where they were selling data to Russia, the way it worked, the way they were able to get so much data that was interesting enough from Russia to go through all these back channels to get it was through these dumb quizzes.
Mm-hmm.
Which 90s sitcom member are you?
Mm-hmm.
Look at your birthday, look at this artist, and what artist probably did your taxes, or whatever the case may
Mm-hmm.
be. And we love them. Clickety, 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 click. Answer the quiz, answer the quiz. Oh, I found out I'm Ross from the Friends. I'm most likely because you answered all these questions and they were able to build a profile on you.
Profile.
Cambridge Analytica collected all that data, sold it to Russia. Russia used that data to influence an election, which is partially why Trump got elected in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we didn't run off and do all these stupid quizzes because we wanted to join in what everybody else was doing and
Mm-hmm.
fill out all this information to get data, then they would not have, the data wouldn't have been as attractive.
Right.
I kind of see the same thing with this. I'm not blaming black folks or whatever the case may be. I'm just saying we have to be more protective over our culture, because the way I read this was they're going to use these infinite quizzes to train the AI to then create this authentic voice that's going to pander to us. Now, what we need to do is be more protective over our culture and say, no, what we're not going to do is give you all this data, give you all
On a
these
silver
clicks,
platter.
and do all these things. And I say, and then my other point, it kind of bleeds into my second point. Jamie Foxx
Oh, poor
had a
Jamie.
medical issue. We don't know if it was a stroke. We don't know if it was whatever the case may be, but the family's been tight-lipped.
Mm-hmm.
They have tried to protect, as much information as they can
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't want all these
Speculation.
speculation or whatever the case may be. And one particular website, I can't think of the name of it, but it was like you mentioned, run by primarily white men.
Mm-hmm.
But the way the website was run, all it did was put out content targeted towards black folks. That's all
Yeah,
they
one
did.
is like Rap
Rappers.
House TV. I think
I
one
think
is
that's
like
what
Daily Loud. It's a bunch
I,
of them that are run by white people in
I
foreign
think the
countries.
I think the Rap House one spring jumps to mind. So what they did was they just put out all kinds of wrong stuff, as particularly as it related to Jamie Foxx. So much so that his family had to say, "Wait, wait, wait! That's not right. I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
they're talking about. In reality, this is what's going on, right?"
Mm-hmm.
So instead of this Rap House TV putting out an apology saying we're sorry, we didn't, but whatever, they then turned right back around and said, reported on Jamie Foxx's sister now is reporting that so and so and so and so and so and so. And the reason why it made, me and other people so upset is because we are the ones that are reading these websites. we're posting them
Likes,
on Facebook, we're
retweeting, yeah.
liking them, we're commenting on them, instead of recognizing that they are not a part of our culture. They are just trying to utilize the popularity of culture
Mhm,
to get paid.
mhm.
So
It's a
all the
honey
way
trap.
back, right? So all the way back around to this, even with those things, with the Cambridge Analytica and with the Rap House TV with Jamie Foxx, there was somebody behind the keyboard doing this, right?
Mhm.
What BuzzFeed is trying to do now is they're like, all we got to do is train this robot, this AI, based off of this information that we will gladly give them. And then they're going to use that information to train this robot to then come up with an authentic voice that is not a part of our culture that's going to turn around and just try to sell us stuff by creating an authentic voice. And I think my whole point is, when are we going to stop falling into this trap of giving these companies access to our culture and then get
Free.
upset for free, and then have the nerve to get upset when we figure out, well, they really don't care about us? I'm like, duh,
They
you
never
know,
did.
but right. So that was my whole thing. I thought that was interesting that of course they're going to do it, because why
Absolutely.
would they not? And then number two, we're going to give them the information. So it's like,
Yeah,
I mean, where do we go from here? Because AI is everything now,
yeah,
and why wouldn't you think these companies are going to, like you mentioned, kick out all the black folks they actually hired as
yeah,
a response to diversity, equity, inclusion, if they can get a robot to do it, because we're
yeah,
going to give them the data. So
yeah.
I, I
And
just thought it was
BuzzFeed News
interesting. Go ahead.
and
Go
BuzzFeed
ahead.
News, before you wrap up, and BuzzFeed News is known for doing these quizzes. They had, I think, this teenage girl who was churning out all these quizzes for free because it was fun for her. But at one point before the pandemic, BuzzFeed was known for doing these quizzes. They were
Hmm.
fun, they were cutesy, and there was all these types of things. You as an individual could create one and submit it, but they were churning, BuzzFeed News were churning these types of quizzes out like nothing. Now they realize the asset that these quizzes are and the data that you
Hmm.
can collect by doing these. I don't think they were doing it before, but now they're like, bet we're gonna take what we're already doing it and make even more money to train these robots to give us this, to help our customers give this authentic voice. So I just want to kind of put in context that BuzzFeed was known for doing these quizzes. I remember, seeing them on the timeline all the time.
Yeah, and it's just like, there are certain people, certain leaders, certain people who are concerned about AI and saying, "Hey, we need to make sure we're building this responsibly. We
Hmm.
need to make sure we're putting in guardrails. We need to make sure that we are, you know, uh, advancing this technology that won't eventually put us at harm." You know,
Ethically, yeah.
Right, and
Responsibly, socially
doing
conscious.
ethically. Right. But we as people are all on this AI train. Everybody's trying to be chat GBT specialists, and you're using it for, oh, I can use it to do this. Oh, I can use it to do that. And it's like, all right, I get it. I get it. But be careful, because we are potentially training our masters. And I know that's just, I know it's far fetched, and I know that's far off. But it's just like, if we're willing to, and specifically talking to Black folks, if we're already willing to give access to our culture, in return, you get really nothing but just being a part of the conversation. When in reality, the people who are using this data are using it to make millions. What else are we willing to give up? And when are we going to wake up? I guess that's my ultimate question, which is
Right.
why I'm so kind of apprehensive against even using ChatGPT. I really don't have no interest to even open up to figure out how to use it in the first place. This is like, I'm just going to wait and see what happens.
So I've used it and it has, for what I've used it for, it was pretty helpful. And I think I said it before, I did it to see how accurate it would be um in comparison to some code that I was writing, how it would
Hmm.
work. And I mean, it was pretty much spot on. I was like, oh, this is cool. But then I was like, oh my God, I don't know how, this is weird.
And I don't think
it
people,
was
I
like, it
don't,
was like,
and humanity as a whole does not have that foresight. And I'm afraid that lack of foresight is going to get us in trouble, like it always does.
Yep.
All right, so that is it for the culture. Gonna move into the hookup, and I don't know if I've made this one before. I have a whole notes section of all these little tips that I like to collect and eventually use them on the show. But what I
Mhm.
didn't do is put check marks next to them to indicate whether or not I used them or not, or
Already.
talked to them or not. So I need to go back and do that. But in the meantime, in between time, if I haven't told you about um, this one, and I think I've talked about it, but I'm just going to say it again.
Say it
If
again.
you
Somebody missed
if
it.
if you are running low on battery and you need to charge your phone and you don't have a quick charger, you don't have a one of those fast charging outlets, or you don't have the cable, or you don't have the MagSafe, you just need to charge it, but you need to charge as fast as possible. Make sure to turn airplane mode on while you're charging your phone, because when your airplane mode is on, that disconnects all the connections, because your phone is getting pinged with messages from all these different
It's
apps,
constantly.
is constantly doing something in the background. And the only way to completely stop all that stuff in the background is to turn airplane mode on. When you turn airplane mode on, it cuts off all that background information to where the only thing your phone is doing is charging. And that, in theory, is going to make your phone charge faster because it's not charging your phone, and also notifications and location and all these other things that's doing is trying to compete. If airplane mode is on, the only thing your device is doing is charging. So that is my tip for the week. If you have a iPhone or Android or any device that has airplane mode and you need to charge it in a hurry, turn airplane mode on to dedicate your phone solely to charging your device. So that is my hookup for the week. Nika, if you don't have anything else, I think that's going to do it for this week's show. Tell the folks where they can find you.
You can find me at Tech Savvy Diva on all of the social media platforms and all around the interwebs.
All right. And you can find me all over the internet at Brother Tech. That's BrothaTech. If you want to follow the show, if you want to interact with the show, if you want to download, listen to the episodes, if you want to show us some love financially, just go to snoboscast.com, and that'll give you all the information you need to know about the show. Until next week, we are out. Peace.
Bye, everybody.